Welcome to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books with Zibby. I'm the host, Zibby Owens. I am an author. My latest is Blank, pub date March 1st, a novel. I'm also a podcaster, obviously, a publisher, a bookstore owner, and so much more. If you love books, you're in the right place. In fact, we call it the Zibbyverse, or really, the LA Times called it the Zibbyverse, and we're going with it. Go to zibbyowens.com to learn more and follow me on Instagram at zibbyowens. Lindsay Hameroff is the author of Till There Was You, a novel. Lindsay is a writer, humorist, and former English teacher raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and based in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Her writing has been featured in McSweeney's Internet Tendency, The Belladonna, Weekly Humorist, and other outlets. She also co-edits Frazzled, a parenting humor site. Till There Was You is her first novel. Welcome, Lindsay. Thanks so much for coming on to discuss Till There Was You, a novel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so funny. I have a novel coming out and their chocolate chip pancakes play a big role. So I feel like we should have a pancake like mashup, meetup, I don't know, something. Buffet.
I love that idea. Just tweet that. Yeah.
Tell listeners what your book is about, please.
Great. So it's a romantic comedy. It's about a chef who is like new to culinary school. She's trying to stay focused. She has this big goal, becoming a chef in a Michelin star restaurant, and she doesn't want to get off course, which of course for her means no dating. She's not going to get involved with guys except one night she's at the bar blowing off steam. She starts chatting to a guy who's sitting there, and he turns out to be the dive bar musician. And they hit it off, and he plays Till There Was You for her because he finds out that she loves show tunes. And then they have like a weekend long fling, and he's like, I'm going to LA to record my demo album. She doesn't think she's going to see him again. And she doesn't. But then like a year later, he becomes a star with this breakout single that's about the blueberry pancakes she made for him the morning after. So everybody's like, wow, this song is so sexy. I wonder what it's about. And she's like, I know what it's about. So she's sort of like trying to move on with her life. You know, she's graduated culinary school. She's working on her job and she's trying to stay focused. And then he shows back up again and is like, I made a mistake, you know, kind of ghosting you. And I want to give this a try. So then they're just both confronting the challenges of having basically like succeeded with each of their individual dreams. And like, if they could be together, you know, while pursuing them.
Awesome. And where did this idea come from?
This idea came from the Harry Styles song, Carolina.
Which was quoted in your, what do you call it, epigraph or whatever?
Epigraph, yeah, I put it in there. I like, during the pandemic, I was listening to that song while I was folding laundry. And I was like, I wonder if this is a true story. So I looked it up and it was a true story. Like he really did meet a girl one time and wrote this whole song about her. And I was like, wow, like what an incredible love story. But then like it never went any further. Like he never saw her again. It just has this hit song. And I was like, what a missed opportunity. Like I'm going to rewrite this story the way that I think it should have happened. And Jake, who is my main character, is not a Harry Styles person. He's like a good old Southern boy. I was also at the same time, I was listening to, I don't know if you remember Chris Allen from American Idol. It's like the only season of American Idol I ever watched.
I watched the one with one of the very first ones, maybe the second season with, I can't remember her name now. Anyway.
Kelly Clarkson, yeah.
No, not Kelly Clarkson. It was like the season maybe after that. Like she has like brown curly hair. She's kind of taller. Oh my God. I'll think of it. Anyway, keep going.
That's okay. It was like the only season I ever watched. It was like Alan and Adam Lambert at the end. And he had this song that he performed, Falling Slowly, which was a cover from the Broadway show Once. And I was listening to that as I was listening to Carolina. And then they sort of conflated into this one idea. So he was sort of based on this like good old Southern boy, like, you know, who was playing show tunes, and they sort of just meshed to become that character of Jake.
So I'm guessing, but tell me if I'm wrong, that maybe you have some affinity for musical theater and Broadway.
I do have an affinity for music. I was actually just in New York this past weekend.
Oh.
And saw 2 Broadway shows in one day.
What did you see?
I saw Hadestown at the Matinee, and then we saw Merrily We Roll Along at night, which was very cool. I was like, Jonathan Groff. So I do have, and I wrote all of the shows that I like. I just wrote them right into the book. You know, I loved The Sound of Music and Les Miserables and all those more classic older ones.
You said in the book when you mentioned that you also wanted to have like 6 siblings after watching. I totally did too. I was like, that would be so fun. Oh my gosh. And we'd all line up with the little whistle and it would be perfect.
It would be so great. It's like completely not fitting with my personality, which is like pretty introverted. And I always want to well, time for my alone time. But I do sort of want that big family, like in The Sound of Music, because I love that movie.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good. So you have this scene at the bar, which you referenced. And of course, she's talking to some Jake and she doesn't know it's Jake. And she's saying how much she doesn't like musicians. And of course, he's a musician. And you know how he asks her what's on her playlist. And she's like, only Broadway. And he was like, show tunes. Oh my gosh. And then of course, he gets up and she's like, how did I not notice the guitar? It must have been sitting there the whole time. Have you had moments like that where after the fact, you're just like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that?
I can't think of like a specific moment, but I'm like the queen of putting my foot in my mouth. So like, I can't think of anything specific, but I'm always just saying something that I'm like, ha ha ha, and then like just look like an absolute jerk afterwards.
I read some of your humor writing, by the way, and I loved your letter to your cleaning lady. I was so obsessed. You read this whole thing about, it was in November of 2020, and you were like, I'm sorry the apartment's such a mess. My boyfriend broke up with me. And then you go and like this whole thing, like, can I be more of a cliche with the Haagen-Dazs and the Chinese takeout? And oh my gosh, you're really funny. You're a very funny writer.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I started off writing humor before I even like ventured into the books. So
well, yeah, let's talk about that. So where did this whole writing career come from? And is this what you wanted to do? Or do you want to be a chef? Like where, do you cook also? Tell me about your whole life.
Sure. I mean, I always wanted to be a writer. I think everyone, was always like, this was my childhood dream. And it was, but I don't know. I couldn't really find the right idea. And I didn't like the idea of just being like, I'm just going to go write a book. I wanted like a steady career. So I ended up becoming an English teacher, as one does, which I like, so we could just spend forever talking about books. And I kept trying to come up with ideas. Nothing ever really stuck. I think I got really stuck in this idea as an English major of like literary fiction. And I was like, it's not really what I write. And I remember being in this, like, I was in like a class in college where we wrote short stories, and I wrote like what I thought, which is pretty much what I write now, like a pop culture celebrity story with like dark humor. And everyone's like, what is this nonsense? I think that sort of like put me off of it for a little while. And then during the pandemic, when I had all this time, I was on maternity leave. I was teaching, I was on maternity leave, and then the pandemic happened. And then I ended up never going back. But I was reading all of this romance. I had like, couldn't read any more Stephen King. I was like, this is not the time to read The Stand during the pandemic. So I pivoted to romance, and I was reading all this stuff. I was reading the After series by Anna Todd. And I was like, this feels like a parody of Twilight, which feels like a parody of 50 Shades, which feels, it is like the same story. And I thought it, and I ended up writing about it. Like I wrote a parody piece about it, and then I got it published. And I was like, oh, that was fun. And then I got like really into writing humor. So when I did that, I started getting on Twitter, which is when I started connecting with other writers. And, like literary agents started following me. And I was like, maybe this is something I could actually do. Maybe I really could write a book. It didn't seem as impossible as it did, and it was just like a vague idea. Mm-hmm. Like, who do you know who's really a novelist? Like, but it started to feel when I was publishing humor, which I really loved, that it was like a possibility. And so I did a writing workshop with Catapult. It was fun. So it was like a novelist and 6 of us, and we were working on it. And I worked until There Was You. And then it just weirdly worked out. I wrote 1 book. I signed with an agent. I sold it, like, which I have since learned is like not common.
Yeah. Not usually the case, but
no.
Good for you.
And so I was just like, oh no, I'm just kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. I'm not a chef. I like to cook. And this is also funny too, because you just like don't know anything when you start writing. I originally imagined Lexi being a teacher because I was a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if I make her a teacher, everyone's going to think I wrote a book about myself, which is so silly because that's what people do. So I was like, what else could she be? It's like, she could be a chef. I didn't know anything about it. I interviewed a chef. I read a few books. I never even worked at a restaurant. I just did a lot of research, which I have been told went well. Chefs were like, this is great. And I was like, excellent. I've never, and it was the pandemic, so I couldn't like shadow anybody.
Nice job. I feel like chefs have been getting a bad rap lately, in particular by, I don't know if it's the Bears, all the shows, and I don't know, the exacting nature and how hard it is to succeed under a chef. And I don't know, I just I watched this silly show called Migration, this movie for kids with my kids.
Oh, I saw it. Yeah.
You did? Oh, you went.
Yeah.
We went to, we went to a theater that like reclined, and I was like, oh, this is great. I'll just take a nap. And then I was like, I forget that it is so loud in the theater, so yeah.
Yes.
What do you think? Anyway, there was a very mean chef in the thing. So.
Yes.
without even any words, just knives and, puffy chest and
a humongous budget for a chef to have a private plane that he could chase all the birds around.
Right? What was up with that crazy helicopter? And then it like flew itself. Anyway, oh my gosh. Anyway. So yeah, chefs, bad rap, but great food. So there you go. Are you writing another book?
I am. I'm getting ready to turn in my second book to my editor this week. It's Allie's story. So it's like a companion novel.
Perfect.
Yeah, that one I had to do less research for because I realized I didn't have to make it so hard on myself. I could write things I knew about. So
excellent. So this is great. So are you still an English teacher or did you quit to write full time?
I never went back. So I went back after the pandemic. My son during the pandemic was diagnosed with autism and he needed a lot of therapy. And it was all home therapy that I really needed to be at home with him for.
Yep.
And so now he's in full-time school, but now I'm writing. So yeah, I just started doing that full time.
How old is he now?
5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So you have all the skills to,
Yeah, I know.
Everything.
All an unexpected journey that sort of led me to where I'd always sort of wanted to be. I don't know if I would have done it had I not had this pandemic and his diagnosis. And I think I probably would have just stayed teaching and stayed comfortable. I know lots of people are teachers and they write. Just never was something that I was able to do.
Yeah. Different times of life too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And what are you reading these days? Right
now I'm reading a love song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams. And I am it is so good. It is so good. I keep going back to reread parts because it's just like even on a line level, it's just so beautiful. And then it just got approved for a few NetGalley things. So I'm excited about that. I have Happy Medium coming down the line, Jessica Joyce's new book, The X-Files. So I keep trying to squeeze in thrillers, but I like to mix it up sometimes.
All of a sudden, I keep having all these thriller ideas. And I'm like, what am I doing? I don't even know. How would I even start to write a thriller?
I have a thriller idea. And I'm like, I don't know if this is something I'm capable of doing.
Right. That's how I feel.
But it percolates all day long.
I'm like, should I give it to someone? Should I give it to someone else to do?
Do I want to give it away? Right, yeah. And then I'm also I also just envision people being like, no, that wasn't good.
Yeah, or it's been done before 100 times, but since I don't read that many thrillers, I don't know. But yeah.
The naivete only gets me so far. I was like, what if I wrote a book about a celebrity and a normie? I bet that's never been done. And I think that it's really was kind of my thought process. But I think that's what's going to happen with the thriller. I'm like, what if it was about housewives? No one's ever written that.
Did you read romantic comedy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to an SNL romantic comedy.
Exactly. Very fun.
Yes.
There's also when moms get involved with boy bands. Did you read? I
read The Idea of You.
Yes,
when it came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It was before I really was a Harry Styles fan. I got into Harry Styles from the After series because I kept being let me visualize Harry Styles, and so I kept pulling him up on my Kindle until eventually I just was ready to, get married. I do like the idea of the mom with the younger.
Yeah. Kind of fun.
Yeah.
I was actually on a plane once with Harry Styles and I didn't even know who he was. It was a long time ago. I know. Yeah.
I would lead with that anytime I met somebody.
I feel like I'm more in the camp of your character here, who's not up on all the things.
Me neither. That's where I've come up with it too. Whenever people are naming music, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I turn around, listen to the Les Miserables soundtrack. I'm not with it.
I definitely know who he is now, but back then it was, well, my husband did know, so he was pointing, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah, I was teaching middle school at the height of the One Direction era, so I knew who they were.
Mm-hmm.
We had a poster in the hallway that said with a One Direction poster, and we used to tell the kids line up facing One Direction. I knew who he was, but I was not really into that music.
So, what is the secret to good pancakes?
Well, for the blueberry pancakes, I think you have to have the lemon juice. I think that's the secret. I actually that is a true part of the story. I actually did when I did not know how to cook at all. I did find this blueberry pancake recipe in a People magazine, and it was like the first recipe I ever mastered. And I did not go into culinary school, but I've seen a lot of blueberry pancake recipes, and I've never really seen a lemon juice one. I do think that helps.
Excellent. I tend to add vanilla.
I've never added vanilla. That sounds good.
Yeah. So I stole it from my husband, so I can't really claim it. But
yeah. You have to get the right size blueberries too, because if they're too big, it like rises too much. You can't really get that right consistency.
Yeah. The other day I was like, I'm basically just making you guys cookies on a pan. Right? I mean, I'm basically making you a chocolate chip cookie for breakfast on a pan.
Yeah.
I think it's a pan, but anyway.
I know.
Didn't stop me.
I like them. They're not my favorite breakfast food. Like, I'll eat them if they're there. And I do make them a lot because my husband and my children love them.
What's your favorite breakfast food?
Like a savory breakfast person. Like, I'd rather have like eggs with salsa.
Ah, okay.
Something for like that realm.
Nice. Amazing. Okay. What advice do you have for aspiring authors? I mean, I could talk about food with you forever.
I know. I could as well. Yeah. I could as well. I think the best advice I got, and I got this when I took a few humor writing classes, like with the Second City, they were great. And I think the best advice I got from there that I have, moved on with is like, you should write to entertain yourself. I think it's very easy to sort of like chase what's trending in the market, or to write what you think people want to read. And I think when you're your own fan and you're writing what you want to read, like you will find your readers. And that was sort of what I did with humor. Like, you don't want to write humor where like you don't really feel like this is funny, but like you feel like that's a trending topic. Like, I used to occasionally try to write political stuff, and I was like, okay, but it wasn't really like my niche sort of interest. And I think that's true. I write, especially the first one and the second book, like I just wrote what I like, and I think that when you do that, you're going to have fun writing it and you're going to have fun reading it and it's going to come through, I think is the most important thing. I remember like trying to come up with book ideas and it just wasn't what I would necessarily want to pick up.
Yeah. I had this writing coach session once and they were like, okay, write the jacket flap copy. And I wrote it and I was like, well, I wouldn't want to read this book.
Exactly. Like if you're not going to want to pick it up, it's going to be hard to put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good tip. All right. Well, congratulations, Lindsay. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.